Thank you so much for tuning into the Animation Industry Podcast. My name is Terry and I'm your host. I've got another stop motion focused episode for you, and this time it is from the incredible Ian Boone of Tumble and Ask the Storybots fame. And what's really neat is that he's animating on the upcoming Henry Selick movie Wendell and Wild right now. Plus, on top of this, he's also very proud to use stop motion to further environmental advocacy in his animated projects for Save the Dells, Arizona, and Raptors Are the Solution. Now, Ian is from Louisville, Kentucky, where he also enjoys playing the banjo, and in our chat, he shares how to get an internship at Laika if you're super fresh to stop motion. He has 2 under his belt, or if you're a stop motion pro, Ian has got a bunch of professional tips, including one that he learned can speed up your animation work tenfold while still maintaining amazing quality. But first, this episode is sponsored by my friends over at Bloop Animation, which is an animation learning platform packed with premium online video courses for aspiring animation filmmakers. They have courses for all major animation programs like Maya, Animate CC, Toon Boom, Blender, TVPaint, and many others, as well as some non-software courses like a storyboarding course, animation foundations course, and even one about making graphic novels, which covers absolutely everything you need to know from start to finish. Their courses are all in video form, so there are no deadlines or application process. You simply just pick a course that you'd like and start learning in seconds. They even offer a free ebook titled Making an Animated Short, which covers their entire process step by step of how they made one of their films, from coming up with the idea to storyboarding, animation, and all the way to exporting the film. And you can get that book for completely free at bloopanimation.com/animationindustry, or you can check out their complete course library at bloopanimation.com/courses. And I've included both of those links in the description of this chat, so please check them out and help support this podcast. Now, without further ado, let's jump right into the chat. Hi, Ian. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast chat. How is everything over there?
It's going good. I am here in my little workroom and during the pandemic. So
Yeah. Well, we're chatting over Skype, which is perfect for the pandemic situation. But we'd be chatting over Skype anyways because I'm in Toronto and you're in Portland. But you've been following the podcast for a while, and I've been following you on Instagram, and that's kind of how we touched base. And I asked you to come on and chat about everything stop motion in your career. So my first question is, what is the overall theme that you want somebody listening to this to kind of take away from our chat? And your career?
Totally. I am a stop motion animator, and I just love this medium and love this industry and this little weird community of stop motion people. And it's just the best. And I hope everyone wants to be a stop motion animator, and that would be my main takeaway, but not too many people because I need a job too.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, well, let's talk about job and your job and career and everything, because you've scaled the ranks really quickly with your career. It's been kind of short compared to some of the other people I've had on this podcast in stop motion. So let's chat about that. Where did you get the itch for stop motion, first of all?
I mean, we can go like all the way back before I even existed. My parents' first date was the Spike and Mike Film Festival in San Francisco. Yeah,
I just published a Spike and Mike, the Animation Outlaws podcast today.
Oh, really? Oh, great!
Yeah, you can.
I haven't seen the documentary yet.
I had Spike Decker on, so he.
Oh, super cool!
All that, yeah.
Great. So my parents' first date was the Spike and Mike Film Festival, and they saw, I guess, one of the first screenings in the US of Wallace and Gromit and Creature Comforts, and I'm sure a lot of other great things too. So I didn't exist yet, but they saw those, and maybe that's somewhere in my DNA. And then I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, which is not a hotbed of animation, but it is like a creative town. And I grew up with artist parents. My mom is a graphic designer and a painter, and my dad was a musician. So my life growing up was fostered with creativity and just making things, and just an idea of it's not weird to work with your hands or just be creative all day.
So did you have home atmosphere of supporting creative career path?
Yeah, totally. I didn't really know. I mean, I was 11 when I discovered animation, but until I was 11, like I liked drawing. I liked making little like scenes with animal toys. Like I was always building something or doing something,
Yeah.
but it wasn't really until I was 11 that I started getting interested in film and animation. And then once I did, it just like totally hit. Like it's been basically nothing else since. Um,
So when did
and
you actually, did you go to school for it? When did you start taking it kind of seriously, I guess?
yeah, so I guess when I was about 12, I was like really like making little short films on you know, the kitchen floor and, just moving clay around. And then when I was 13 or 14, somewhere around there, I started making a little web series called Beaver Creek, which was just this little like claymation series that I put on YouTube and other like stop motion forums and stuff. And I started, I mean, it never went like viral, but like I started getting like people were seeing it, and I was getting like some like awards and things in middle school. And
Yeah.
um, then throughout high school, I started making other short films and even like a few projects for hire. And I got a couple of really like nice opportunities. I won uh, these awards called the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, and like I got to go to Carnegie Hall and meet other artists my age for the first time. I wasn't, I went to like an all boys Catholic high school, which was
Sports.
good, but yeah, football all day long. And I had three really great art teachers that encouraged me and pushed me and encouraged, again, creative thinking and like just this is like an actual career path if you want. And so that was starting to look more possible kind of later in high school. It was definitely becoming something more than like just like a hobby, right? Like I was doing like little projects for like clients, even like towards the end of high school, which is, I wasn't making much money from them, but like they were,
No, but still,
it
yeah.
was paid work essentially. Um, and then I I went to Cal Arts for a little bit in the experimental animation program, and my first year there, I had an internship at Stupid Buddy on Robot Chicken season 7,
Nice.
so back in the day. And then after my first year at Cal Arts, I had my first internship at Laika, and that was on Kubo and the Two Strings. So
Wait, so let's slow down a little bit. First of all, I want to say that like Beaver Creek, I'm so blown away that you said you were 13 when you made that.
yeah, I
Like
started when I was 13.
that's insane. Like it has full production, there's characters, backgrounds, there's sets, like the animation is very good. Like
Oh, thank you.
I would think an adult made that. But anyways, so um I just my question about the support thing, I'm wondering like what did your parents, because like thinking about my own story and like other people's stories, like there's that whole sense of like get a real job, right, versus
Yeah.
like animation, especially stop motion, where it's so niche to get into. And like did you ever feel that pressure to pursue a different career path, or like it sounds like stop motion was just your thing the whole way through?
It really was my thing. I mean, really from like the time I was 12. Like um, I, I never, I had other interests. I still have other interests. Like
Yeah.
and actually a lot of them kind of tie together. I've been fairly consistent in the things that I like throughout my life. I like wildlife. I like banjos. I like animation. And all of those things are still things that I like, and all of those kind of culminated in this series when I was 13.
Right.
And you know, I got involved in sort of like wildlife activism through it as well. So I never really thought that that would be a true path, like a career path, but that was always like another really heavy interest was some sort of wildlife related thing, but never quite got there with like, this is what I'm supposed to do. So animation was really the focus. And both my parents worked from home. So my mom had her graphic design business in the house. So I was definitely like exposed to like working. Like it was like normal to see my parents like just making things and like working long hours, and like I feel like I like got instilled like a sort of sense of like hard work, and like creative things are hard to do and they need a lot of effort to be good. And I think that is an important thing to realize when I was, 11 or so.
Yeah, that's super young age to realize that. I didn't think about working seriously until I was in my late teens. So, okay, so you got into Cal Arts and in the
Uh-huh.
experimental program, and
Yeah.
I'm assuming you focused on stop motion animation?
Yeah, I started there, and I'm sure anyone that has either gone to school for stop motion or has looked into going to school for stop motion knows that there are no places to go to school for stop motion. But Cal Arts is, I mean, there's a few that you have stop motion as part of their curriculums, but there isn't like, just a really like great place to like focus on stop motion. But Cal Arts has a lot of things that help with that. Mostly Stephen Kyoto, who is just, was the person I needed at that time the most. Like someone, because I'd grown up around a lot of creativity and art and things like that, but I never had any other animators. I mean, there were forums and outlets online where I could ask questions and find out information, but stop motion especially is hard to learn
Yeah.
without being able to just like ask people really like weird specific questions and have people show you things, and like, this is how you wrap armature wire, and like, this is how you put latex on a puppet, and just like super specific things that are just hard to learn on your own.
Oh,
Um and so Stephen really, I got to Cal Arts and like made it a point of mine to just learn as much from Stephen as I could, because he's, this legend. He's been on the show, right?
yeah, he has. He
Yeah.
has been. I've
Um,
chatted with him.
yeah. So he's just this, master of, I mean, a lot of things. Kyoto Bros do animatronics and puppets and all sorts of things. But, he has like a philosophy of stop motion that it resonates with me.
I like that you brought up this point because I used to like I grew up doing stop motion and not knowing a soul in my city, whatever, that did stop motion. Like it was all by myself, and I used to think of it as like a lonely sport. But I like that you brought
Yeah.
this up because like just meeting somebody else who does stop motion feels so great, and like I feel like an instant connection, and then suddenly you can like chat about all these weird things and ask all these weird questions that you have no idea where to go to otherwise. Like I remember, yeah, like stopmotionanimation.com. I was like all over that when I was a kid.
Oh
But
yeah,
like
totally.
but like asking a weird question, you don't even know what to ask, and then you have like the
Yeah, no.
professionals like telling you like, oh, use this really expensive, like complicated thing, and you're like, I have $5 in my bank account. I'm just a kid. So I love that you brought that up because it's so important to meet other people like in real life that kind of do the stuff that you want to do too. So that's great
Yeah,
that you found.
absolutely. And like I had other, like when I was I think 15, I had gotten in touch with Barry Purvis, who's a great British stop motion animator, just a true like another kind of legend of short films and just like a real like artist. And we kind of struck up like a correspondence when I was a teenager, and he was like really encouraging and just helpful to like know like how an animator talks, kind of, because like there's all this terminology that like you don't really know, and you can kind of get it from books, but not a whole lot. So he was really helpful. And then once I finally met Steven in person, then that's really when like kind of a light started to click for like, this is how this is done. Nice. For real.
So you're doing stop motion in experimental animation, and then you get an internship at Stupid Buddies through that, but then you get an internship at Laika. That wasn't through school, was it?
It kind of was. We had a portfolio day at CalArts where you can put out a portfolio, and I think I put out a few puppets and some animation and stuff. And then I think Steven actually recommended me to them and was like, hey, you should check out this kid's work. I was super young. I mean, I was like 19. And my work was fine, but like not like a quality yet. But they usually said like, oh, we don't look at anyone that's not like a third year or something. But they took a look at my stuff and they liked it, and they said they would maybe be in touch. And I think like a couple weeks later, I got a phone call from their recruiter, and they asked me to come up that summer. So amazing. I did, obviously, and that was the moment where like I realized that I had no idea what I was doing.
Well, wait, you had some idea what you're doing, obviously, because you got an internship at Laika. But okay, so I get this question, and I see this question all the time on like Instagram and whatnot. How do you get an internship at like Stupid Buddies or Laika? Like, what are they looking for that you can produce? Because so many, especially now, because everybody's doing well, not everybody. A lot of people are doing stop motion from home.
It's a lot more accessible.
Yeah. So tell me the deets. Give me
so it's definitely different for each studio. The way I got the internship at Stupid Buddy was this really roundabout way. It was my senior year of high school, actually, and I was out in LA in Burbank for a film festival, and it was at the like the final dinner, like wrap up for the festival, and the seating was like random, and I ended up being sat next to Matt Seinrich, who's the co-creator of Robot Chicken and the owner of Stupid Buddy.
Yeah.
And I didn't know who he was. Also
been on this podcast.
Oh, has he? Okay. See, there you go. And I didn't know who he was other than his name, but like I didn't know him by sight. So we got talking, and he was like, oh yeah, I have a studio. And I was like, wow, you are the person that created Robot Chicken. So that was like a little bit of a shock. And we kept in a little bit of touch, but mostly he put me in touch with his animation director, Alex Kamer. So we were in touch throughout my senior year of high school. And then basically once I decided to come out to CalArts, he was like, well, Robot Chicken season 7 starting right around that time. Why don't you come on as an intern? I had some work that I just finished up and put together like a little reel, and it was, I guess, good enough. He gave me some tips, actually, like some stuff to like work on like that summer, I think. Practice animating on 2s, practice like some like punchy kind of poppy stuff. And so like that's what Stupid Buddy is looking for. They're looking for, usually looking for like comedy stuff and like how big of poses you can do, and just like the really like kind of humor-based movement and stuff like that. Whereas Laika is very different in what they're looking for. the kind of reel you want for Laika is, you want to be able to animate on ones. And I mean, I'm getting kind of technical. I figure anyone listening to this podcast probably knows what it means to animate on ones. But you want to animate at 24 frames per second. Animating every frame and as smooth as you can get. But Laika is really the thing that they really look for in animation. And I learned this there, is like weight. Like you want your characters to have like good weight. If your character's standing there, don't just have them like stiff, have them kind of on one leg and then, shift over to the other leg and really like figure out like how hips move and like body mechanics stuff, which I guess I had thought about a little bit, but never to that level. Like I got to Laika that summer, and totally was just like put through all the tests that I could never have imagined. Like animate walks every day for 2 months. Just perfect it. Like just really get it so everything is in the right spot. All the hips are moving and flowing and the knee is bending in the right spot. Just stuff like that where like, it's not, Laika isn't interested in like, the cartoony stuff as much. It's really, it's much more based in reality. So like, somebody, and this was 6-7 years ago now. So maybe, I don't know what their like process for recruiting interns is now, but yeah, I would say somebody that wants to get into Laika should just have like a really clean reel of like just beautiful animation walks and weight shifts and personality changes, something where like a character is feeling one thing and then like goes to another emotion and things like that.
Probably doesn't hurt to have some connections, because it sounds like both of your internships you got with the help of connections too. So maybe reach out to people, become
Totally,
friends
yeah.
with so and so or whatnot. Yeah. So
And that's like an important thing in animation, but especially stop motion. Stop motion is such a tiny world. Like there's so few people that do this. You will get to know everyone or almost everyone very quickly in this industry. Yeah. So like even just a few connections, and not even just connections, just like make friends, like that's like that's really been the best way to like get a job in stop motion.
But okay, so I agree with that. But for instance, like what if you are from small town XYZ in, I don't know, India or like the UK or like Toronto, like me, where everything was just online and I was just some kid. How do you make friends and connections that actually pay off to get a role?
I know it's tough. Stop motion is so location based. You can't do it really from afar. You have to be, at least usually it takes, at least a small group of people together to do it. I mean, there are people that can do it, in a bedroom or a garage or something and make beautiful work. But to like work in an actual studio and make, a lot of content, like it takes a lot of people and it takes people all together. So there are sort of hubs of stop motion, and I wish there were more in more varied places, like, but right now in the US, it really is kind of LA and Portland.
Yeah.
And I mean, you kind of have to be in one of those places if you want to like really make a living as a stop motion animator in this country, at least. I actually don't know much about stop motion in Canada, but you kind of have to be in one of those places if you want to be like a studio animator. So if you are in a place that isn't one of those places, try to visit, go to film festivals, go to, there's like animation talks or retrospectives or, things that happen around, we're in a time where you can just email. Like I get emails from people, not like, probably a couple times a year, being like, hey, I'm interested in working in stop motion. How can I get in? How do I get work on a show? Or, do I have to like move to this place? And like eventually, probably yes. But to start getting to know people, I think you can kind of be wherever now. I came from Louisville, Kentucky, which was, there's no animation there. So, but I was going to film festivals. I was reaching out to people through email and whatever. And I think that is important to do. You have to kind of make yourself known, which is kind of scary and goes against a lot of animators' tendencies to be pretty quiet and, not, a lot of animators don't necessarily want to like be the life of the party. Some do, but it can be hard for a lot of people, and me included. So that is not an easy task, but I think it's more possible now than ever to be from somewhere and be doing this stuff.
Well, and I think if you want to work in stop motion professionally, you have to sacrifice a lot. Like you moved out of your hometown, you went to school, you even quit early to get into the industry. You did 2 internships at Laika, like, which is ridiculous. Yeah. So let's fast forward a bit. You've been working in the industry for a while now. What is your like kind of specialty go-to animation that people are like, we need Ian on this project because he doesn't just do stop motion, he does.
Yeah. So I really like, who knows? My animation directors might have a different answer for this question. But from my perspective, I love like detail work. I think that's one of the cool things about stop motion is that it is
everything in stop motion is detail work. What do you mean?
Exactly. Like everything is detail work, but especially like, I don't know, like little movements, emotional stuff. I kind of like animating sad characters. I know that seems kind of depressing, but do
you feel sad while you're animating a sad character?
No, not really. You kind of have to get into that mindset a little bit, but I like doing things with emotion, but it's also fun to do like cute thing. Like I worked on Tumble for a while, and like that was like a super cute show and just like charming animation, and that kind of stuff is really fun to do. Just like try and make things look like as appealing as possible.
So if I'm the animation director, I'm like, we got a charming, cute, sad character.
Exactly. Cast me for it, Put me on it.
So then when somebody loves what they're doing, they put a lot of extra into it that they're not asked for. So when you animate a charming, cute, sad character, like what is something that you put in that probably nobody will notice, but it like brings it to life for you?
Oh, that's a good question. I love thinking about like, there's kind of the classic animation answer of like, animate what the character's thinking, not what the character's doing. And like, I think that is great to do. And you have to just like think about like the eyes and, really, animating like just little things like little like shoulder shifts can be really fun, or that can just like really sell. Like you can get so much out of like a single little like look up of an eye. Like if the character is like looking down and just like looks up for like 8 frames and then back down, like that can just like make a scene. And I love doing stuff like, and it's such a little detail, but it can really make a character come to life. And I'm such a like nerd. I love just like micro increments in stop motion, which seems like torture, and it kind of is. But I'm not someone that's particularly good at like, I'm not like a super cartoony animator. Like I can kind of do the robot chicken stuff, but like there's people that can really do that and like are really good at it and just are like super funny. Like their animation just like makes you laugh when you look at it. And like I can kind of get there, but I would never like sell myself as like a super like hilarious like posy animator. But I do I love getting into like little like drifting characters and like moving holds and things that like honestly you probably shouldn't do too much of, otherwise the character is going to get like floaty. So I can actually like probably do too much of that sometimes, but I love doing that kind of thing where you just like are keeping a character alive by not doing much with it but doing just enough, and it's a real balance, you know.
Yeah. So you mentioned things like, having the eyes look up for 8 frames and whatnot. I'm assuming that's straying away from the storyboards. Is that right? Or would that be worked in when you talk to the director?
It really depends, and different projects depend more on storyboards than others.
Yeah.
Um, when I got to Tumble, my animation director basically told me to disregard the storyboards. Not completely. That sounds weird and harsh to do, but like basically anything that the storyboards were good for, like kind of the very broad actions on that show. Like, this character needs to start on this side of the screen and end up on this side of the screen. But the acting was very much dictated by what the director wanted, and he would, act it out and tell you pretty specifically what he wanted. But then there's always room to add stuff in, to sometimes take things away if it feels like too much. So there's a weird balance of like knowing what you need to capture in a scene to make it sell as the scene, and to get the emotion or the clearest action that's happening. But yeah, some projects are very specific about like, this character needs to look up and hear this noise on this frame, and you better hit your mark or the scene's not going to work. And then some shows are like, the character looks up and does this and does that, and then he goes away. And like I've worked on all the variations of and in-betweens of that.
So it depends. You also mentioned something that I'm very interested about, because it's kind of counterintuitive to how you think with animating. So you said that you should animate what the character's thinking, not what the character is doing.
Yeah.
So like, so say like, I go to my storyboards or the director or whatever, my scene is character A has to crack an egg and put it into a bowl and mix it. How do you change your mindset away from those actions when you need to do those actions into how the character is thinking, to then have the actions kind of secondary to that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think that's an old Ollie Johnston quote, one of the Disney Nine Old Men, is, what's the character, animate what the character's thinking, not what it's doing. And it's hard. It's really easy to just be like, I'm going to get this puppet from this side of the screen, and he's going to pick up this thing and do whatever with it. Like, that is one way to do it, and it'll probably work. Like on a TV show or something, like, sometimes that is what you have to do, because you just don't have time to like analyze every single frame and emotion of what's happening in a scene. But ideally, you want to like think about, okay, why is this character going to this spot? Like if he's picking up, what do you say, an egg or something?
Yeah.
Is he hungry? Is he really hungry? Like, how fast is he going to be moving to cook this egg? How, like, is Is he making the egg for someone else? Is he nervous? And like all of those things will tell you how the character's moving. So you're not just animating like this arm is moving up for 3 frames and then it comes down. And like you're thinking about what is motivating that arm to do that, and it's because this character's in a rush and he's trying to get to a party on time and he's moving really fast. So it's or the opposite, the character's sad and maybe it's like walking really slow, and you have to think about the technical stuff. But in my experience, the shots that I look at that I've done that I'm like really proud of are the ones where I specifically remember feeling the easiest, where like the emotion falls into place and you don't have to think as much about the technical aspect of like the frame by frame motion of it, where you're just like really feeling the feelings of the character. And that's a special moment when that happens. It doesn't always happen, and sometimes you just have to hope that it does and strive for that. But you can try and get yourself in the mindset of that as often as you can.
I totally understand that feeling, and that's why I love stop motion, because for me it's like an all-encompassing thing that kind of takes me to another place that doesn't exist in the real world when that happens.
Totally. I know.
So you've talked about Tumble. Okay, so you had an internship at Stupid Buddy, and that's like poppy cartoony. Then you went to Laika, which wants ridiculous technical skills and like on ones and like perfection. Then you go to Tumbleleaf, where you are working professionally finally for the first time, and like, can you just talk about how you ended up getting there and like how you changed your whole mindset and everything so many times?
Totally. So again, like these good connections are kind of everything. There's an amazing animator named Dan Mckenzie who he's I guess maybe 5 or 6 years older than I am. I had reached out to, or we met when I was towards the end of high school. I was trying to figure out like where I should go to college and just career stuff in general. And Dan and I met at a film festival and kept in touch. And eventually, I think it was right before I went back to the second internship at Laika, Dan reached out to me and said, hey, he was on Tumbleleaf at that point, and he said, hey, we're looking for more animators on Tumbleleaf. Would you be interested in me putting you in touch with our animation director? And so I was like, sure. I had never worked like as a full-time animator before. I'd had a few internships and done some short projects and things like that, but I'd never like been a full-time animator. So I was nervous to test for that, but so I went into BixPix and met with Rachel Larson, who was the animation director at the time, now of Tiny Chef fame. And she gave me an animation test to do, and I went in, and you basically get a line of dialogue and a puppet, and they give you like a show Bible or a character Bible, and they're like, this is what this character is like. And I studied up on the show. I mean, I watched it and seen it and was trying to absorb as much as I could. But yeah, you go in for 8 hours, or 10 hours or whatever, a work day, and animate that shot, just on a test stage. And at the end of the day, they're like, thanks so much for coming in. We'll be in touch.
Oh man, that sounds so intimidating.
And then I, go up to Laika for that summer. And I think, I don't know, midway through that summer, I get an email from Rachel, and she asked if I wanted to join the crew. So I did, and came back down that fall, I guess like late August, early September, and started on Tumbleleaf. And it was another moment of like, oh no, I don't know what I'm doing.
That's insane
Um,
because like you've studied, like you've done stop motion a lot, and you're studying at Laika. Why do you feel like you don't know what you're doing when you're clearly the most qualified person for the job because you just got hired for it?
so I knew what I was doing in theory,
Yeah.
but doing an internship at Laika. So the way an internship at Laika works is you're basically like a trainee. You get assigned a mentor and who's one of the animators, and you do animation tests for 3 months, and you learn how to do walks and weight shifts and all the things I was talking about earlier. And you're animating for 8-10 hours a day, and that was the first time I'd ever really had the chance to do that, outside
Yeah.
of like summers during high school. But so that in and of itself is a new learning experience. But the way that it's approached at Laika is very much satisfies the like perfectionist side of me, where it kind of doesn't matter how much you're getting done. It's more about like how pretty the final image looks. So
Gotcha.
like, you can do 20 frames a day, and like at least during the internship, that was fine. Like they were good with that on ones, just
That's
so
like
you're getting.
one frame every half hour.
Yeah, it's not much. And like I'm not a super fast animator. There's people
Yeah.
that can go faster than that, but I think that's about what I was getting, and like that was kind of fine there. But
So
I was learning how to. Oh, go ahead.
I'm assuming on Tumbleleaf you can't do one frame every half hour. Are you doing like
Oh,
15
you
frames
definitely
every hour?
can't. So I am used to that. I'm like, loping along, making my frames really pretty, getting all the arcs right, making everything beautiful. And then I start on Tumbleleaf, and 200 frame a day quotas on twos. So, 100 poses essentially every day. And I couldn't do it. I was not able to shoot that much. I just hadn't ever done that before. I was an intern on Robot Chicken, so I was around that a little bit, and Robot Chicken would shoot more than that in a day. But so like I knew people that could animate that fast and was kind of around that, but I'd never done it. And Tumbleleaf is a really special show because it looks gorgeous
Yeah.
and beautiful, and just has insanely high quality production value. Um, but it also was a fast production. Like you had to move really quickly, or at least for me. And so I got to Tumbleleaf, and was sort of having like kind of a nervous breakdown. Like I was not able to get the quotas. And actually, Rachel Larson got hired to work on Isle of Dogs like right after I started. So she had hired me, and then she left for London. Basically, right when I started on Tumbleleaf. So Michael Granberry became the animation director, and he was kind of my savior. And I don't know how he put up with me. Um, and if he's listening to this ever, I'm gonna gush about him a little bit. But he really uh, just helped me learn how to animate in like a totally radically different way than I ever had before. Um, I had just gotten from Laika. I was used to animating, yeah, like a frame, every 20 minutes, half hour, just really perfecting it. And he basically said, set a timer, you know, set a timer for 5 minutes. And at the end of 5 minutes, take the frame. You just have to take the frame at the end of 5 minutes. And that is really scary because like
Yeah.
I didn't know if that frame would be ready in 5 minutes. And sometimes it wasn't, you know, sometimes I'd have to do more. But it got me in the mindset of like just moving the puppet and having it be there. Like the way that I kind of naturally animate and the way that I was learning to animate was, you know, very like move the puppet, check it, finesse it, move it, check it, you know, just all this back and forth. And Michael really helped me figure out just ways to like get motion happening quickly, you know, really, you know, he said this thing to me about like letting some frames be like awkward teenage frames where like it's kind of fine that they're in like a weird in between stage. Like as long as your main pose is fine and you're trying to get to another pose, the frames in between, as long as they make enough sense, they don't have to be like perfect, you know. And that really helped and it's hard to do for me. Like I really struggled with that. But
So what's a good enough awkward teenage frame in between versus a perfect in between if you have a character maybe standing from point A and then in
uh-huh.
point B they're looking, I don't know.
Yeah, so like, you know, in the first frame, you'll be standing there and then maybe you ease into it a little bit, you know, the arm comes up, maybe to like, you know, like look like it's looking off in the distance at its forehead or something.
Yeah.
And so the arm comes up and then you start to ease in, make your eases kind of pretty, you know, make sure everything is, you know, consistently moving, you know, make sure the movement isn't like jaggedy and stuff. But like when you get to kind of like the middle of that, you can kind of just like have a frame where the arm is, you know, halfway up the body pose and, you know, it doesn't have to like be like a perfect, the in-betweens don't have to be perfect poses in and of themselves. They can, as long as they read getting the motion from one place to the other, then it'll probably be fine. And just make that first pose really good, do your eases really well, and then the stuff in between, as long as it's headed in the right direction, it's probably going to be fine. And like he didn't spell it out like that for me. That was kind of me learning how to do that and my take on it. But that took a long time to figure out for me. It really, really was tough. Like I wanted to make every frame perfect. And
Yeah.
and the thing is, like if you're making every frame perfect, you're probably gonna get worse animation. Like if you're, unless you're truly doing the Laika thing where like you can kind of take as much time as you want to do it, um, the animation might be a little more stale and you're probably going to get just burnt out, you know, if you're putting as much, you shouldn't be putting as much focus into every frame because there are some poses, some actions that are more important than others. And that was kind of the other thing, like, you know, he helped me focus on like what's the important part of the shot, you know, what is like the meat and the emotional weight of whatever the shot is, and like that's where the energy needs to go to.
Hmm.
And if you can do that, you'll have the energy to just kind of blast through the stuff that isn't as hard. So you can maybe take 10 minutes on some frames as long as you take 2 minutes on other frames, you know?
That's
It,
something I need to learn.
yeah, it
Because
is. It's tough.
I,
It's really
yeah,
hard.
I approach every single frame in my stop motion like the most important frame that I'm on in that moment.
And that's like a definite thing in
Yeah.
stop motion that's hard to get around because like you're looking at a puppet. It feels like whatever's right in front of you must just be so important because you're staring at it. It's not moving when you're staring at it. So like it feels like, oh, this pose has to make so much sense.
Yeah.
And like it should make sense. Like if you can get beautiful animation that's perfect, and it also doesn't take you a whole lot of time. By all means, do it. But
Well, and the
there's
other thing
very
is
few
like
people that can do that.
you have your pop through and stuff, but in 2D and CG, your poses are completed. But in stop motion, there's always the what if the puppet falls over in this shot, or
Yeah,
what if I overstep and I don't get there? So that like it's so hard to because the future pose is like always an unknown in my head. It's
yeah,
so hard to give up on a frame that I'm on because part of my thinking is like if I don't do this right, I'm not going to get the end result looking good.
yeah.
So, but I,
And the past poses don't exist either, really.
yeah,
Like in CG and 2D, you can always go back and edit things. Like
yeah,
once you've moved that puppet out of the pose that it's in, you can kind of do a cutback, but it's never going to be exactly where it was before, and it will never be there again.
yeah,
So it's hard to move forward if you don't really know where you're going with something. It's hard to move forward because you're afraid of like losing where you're at too.
oh yeah.
So it can be scary to think like, oh, this is a pose that's gone forever as soon as I touch this puppet. And what if I can't ever get back to it?
Right. And it's well, and it's like it's permanent too, like you said, which is crazy. Like every single time you move anything, it's like a conscious choice that you're
Hmm.
projecting how it's going to affect everything in the scene. Like if I decide to suddenly, maybe there's curtains on the window and I decide, oh, it's a little bit windy out and I decide to suddenly move the curtain. Now I have to remember to move that as it
Yeah.
would be wind blown for the entire scene. I can't just stop. Like, so,
And that was the thing on Tumbleleaf too. It was rarely just one character.
oh yeah,
Like
Tumbleweed's insane. There's like 8 characters on a screen, small, big, multiple arms.
exactly. So like and they were always jumping around. They were always doing fiddling with something, building something, or digging something out of a treasure chest. Like Tumbleleaf was a busy show,
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff is so fun to animate, but it does take a lot of thinking and effort to like get there. It's tough to like knock out those frames when there's like so much going on and so many characters. There's some animators that like, they would do these like 10 or 12 character shots, and just like I know I only had a few shots on Tumbleleaf that had like true crowd scenes. And they're hard. But sometimes once you get enough puppets, you're not looking at everything close enough. You can actually get away with a lot more.
There. Yeah. So you've been, I love that you've been instilling all these learnings that you've had. Um, do you have any like anything else that you've learned that has kind of changed the game for you in terms of your animation skill or just the mindset you've had of approaching animation or like, I don't know, have you received any critiques where that things really clicked for you afterwards?
Yeah, totally. I love good feedback. I mean, I think that is kind of the most important thing in any animation, but I think especially stop motion because you can't go back and change it. If you get feedback on a CG shot, you
Yeah.
can change it. Whereas like in stop motion, if you get good feedback, it's like extra cutting
Too
because it's
bad. I'm
like
not going back and redoing
too
it.
bad. It's just like that shot is done. You have to redo it or just hold on to that for next time. So you kind of I've learned how to like almost have like a little like mental library of feedback that I've gotten.
Oh,
I think where like I just can remember certain critiques in certain moments. If I'm animating like a certain thing, like a walk or something, like I will remember, like this is what, this animator or my mentor or whoever said to me when I was animating a walk 4 years ago about the knees and not to bend them too much or to bend them more. And like I can kind of think about the advice that people have given me over the years and put that into action in a different scenario because it's rare that you're ever going to get feedback on something and then do that exact same thing again. So you have to be able to translate feedback into different things. And I think that took me a while to learn, because once you learn how to do one thing, then you don't have to do as much if you're doing a similar thing, a year later. It'll be easier, and you won't have to put as much mental energy into that one specific thing, and you can focus more on the acting or the like body mechanics or something, whatever the thing is that you can kind of do subconsciously. The less you have to think about anything, the better. And I'm still learning how to do that, but that was, I think that's been something that took the longest to click, was like, you don't have to overthink everything,
Yeah. No, I like that a lot, and it's amazing that you are able to have like a library in your head of all those critiques and stuff, and that only comes from working with other people. Like you can't get that with only your own perspective on your own work. So
Yeah,
yeah.
totally.
So one topic I want to talk about is in 2014 you actually quit stop motion altogether. You were like, I've had enough of stop motion. I've been to Stupid Buddy, I've been to Laika, I've been to Tumble. There's nothing. I don't know. Why did you decide to quit stop motion when for the past this whole podcast you've just talked about loving it and everything?
Yeah, classic burnout. So it
Yeah.
was, it was after, I'd done the internship at Stupid Buddy. I'd done the internship at Laika. It was before Tumble, but I was, during my second year at CalArts, a friend of mine and I decided to make this like epic film. Like, we went like all out on this second year film, and it's still not finished 7 years later.
No.
Uh, so that happened, but we really were, at least I felt like I was in over my head. I was trying to make, like we were saying earlier, like I was really trying to make every shot perfect, every frame perfect. Like I hadn't learned any of this stuff that I was just talking about yet. And I was still like every single frame, I remember being in my mind, like, this frame has to impress Laika. And like, that is not a way to get good animation or good performance. Well, maybe it is, but you're not going to enjoy it. You're not going to enjoy the process if you're like constantly thinking to yourself, like, I have to prove this to someone else,
Yeah.
So we were working on this film, and I was just frazzled. I mean, I was not sleeping ever. I was, because at CalArts, there were classes during the day, or some classes were at night. I had like kind of a weird schedule. So basically, the only time I could find to animate was at night. So I would stay up all night animating. And
What?
yeah, it was stupid. Like, of course I burned out.
So how
And
many hours of sleep did you get a day?
like probably 2 or 3, I don't know,
Oh my
like
gosh.
for months. Like I just, um, yeah, it was, and I just was never, actually looking back on it, there is some animation in it that I still have in my reel that I'm pretty proud of. So like it was like my tortured artist phase. Like I was actually getting pretty good work out of it, but like I was not happy. I was barely alive. So I was like kind of doubting. I don't think I ever truly doubted like if I really loved it. Like I still loved stop motion. I loved animating, but I was just tired. So after that year, I basically said, I can't do this anymore, at least for the time being.
Okay.
And because I was actually going to go back to Laika that summer. They had invited me back for the second internship, that summer. I ended up going back the summer after that, but I I told them like, hey, I need some time to like, you know, figure things out or whatever. And I went back a year later, and I'm glad that they had me. But so I kind of turned them down, and then just decided to like go back home for a summer.
Yeah.
And I didn't touch a puppet for about 9 months, I guess.
Oh, wow. So what did you do?
So I wanted to have. I still, am a creative person. I don't like being idle. I don't like having nothing to do, and I still like, making things. But I think I mentioned earlier, my dad was a musician. So growing up, I was like around a lot of music, but I always like pushed it away. Like I was never interested in music. And then, I mean, I kind of started to get interested in other kinds of music, into like old time folk music and country music and stuff, throughout high school and college, but not playing it. So, and then till this time when I was just like so frazzled, I was just like, I need something else. So I went back home and started learning how to play the banjo. And it like really just like totally saved my brain. Like I just, it opened up like another creative thing I could do that just didn't occupy any of the same parts of me that animation did. So I basically went back home for a summer, started taking banjo lessons, roaming around Eastern Kentucky, going to festivals and stuff, and just like immersing myself in like a totally different world. And then I ended up going back to CalArts that semester, but I kind of knew I wasn't really like I wasn't really animating that semester. I was just kind of going through the motions, and then I ended up leaving CalArts after that semester. So like, I think I went a full 9 or 10 months without animating a single frame, without touching a puppet. And by the time that was over, I was really ready. Like I think, month 8 or so of that, I was like, okay, I think I have a few more things figured out about like how I can animate for my life and also like have like mental health, you know?
Yeah. Well, I'm still curious because you also went back to school, but said your heart wasn't really into it. So what
Yeah.
was that? What was that big, like, what were you expecting to do
So I
otherwise?
think I didn't really know. And I think that
Right.
was part of the problem. Like I don't think it was ever I don't think it was ever animating that was the thing I disliked. I think it was like the lack of sleep or the stress of like a production or the more external things. And I think so I went back to school, and I actually started sculpting a lot during that time too, which I really enjoy and do kind of on the side, just for fun. And so I was doing a lot of sculpting, but no animating. And then after I left CalArts for good, um, in I guess after that fall semester,
Yeah.
then I went back home one more time to Kentucky and just started animating a few little tests. Like I built a little puppet just to see if I could kind of feel myself getting back into it. Like
Hmm.
really just to ease myself back into like, do I enjoy this? And I really did. And after like a month or two of that, I decided like, okay, let's see if I can really do this without like the stress of school or this insane project.
Yeah.
And so I wrote back to Laika and was like, hey, I'm free this summer. I would love to come back up for another internship if you guys will have me. And they did. And that was also the same time that I got the call from Tumbleleaf, and so everything kind of just fell into place right around the same time. Of like, it's pointing in this direction, and I'm glad that it did, because I've stuck with it ever since, you know.
Yeah.
But that
Well,
it was a hard time. It was tough.
for sure. I think that's super kudos to you. Like quitting school is like a huge risky decision, and like moving back home and like all these things, and you figured it out, and I think that's awesome. And obviously you've come out on top. So let me ask you, you know, you've mentioned a lot of things during this chat, you know, 10-hour days, 8 10-hour days, going through the ringer so many times, learning all these things, taking a break for 9 months, learning music, coming back to the industry. Has it all been worth it for you? Like, is this who you are? Is this what
Oh,
you,
I love it.
I mean, it sounds like it. Yeah.
Yeah, I love stop motion, and I love the stop motion community. Like, I can't stress enough. Like, I think Tumbleleaf was the perfect first job. Like,
Yeah.
that project was so, like, I mean, it sounds super cheesy, but like, it was magical. Like, it really was. Like, every Wednesday you would be animating, and suddenly the smell of warm cookies would start drifting through the studio, and then somebody would like knock on your curtain, and they'd have a tray of chocolate chip cookies fresh out of the oven. And like, that's just like what that studio was. And it was just wonderful, wonderful people, and you know, just a really great, talented crew. There were quite a few other animators around my age, a little bit, maybe like a little bit older, but like, you know, some older, I guess, maybe a few, you know, a little bit younger, but yeah, it was like a pretty young crew. So I felt like, I don't know, I just felt really like at home on that production. So that was like the best. I mean, like all the other stuff I said earlier was also true. You know, it was hard, and the actual work was really tough to do. But the studio culture, the people that make this weird little stop motion community what it is are just like the best people. Because I think what it is, my thesis about why stop motion people are great is, no, I don't want to say no one, but very few people like fall into stop motion. Most, you wouldn't. Like, it's terrible. Like, it's it's like the worst way to make anything. Like, it takes a long time, it's hard on your body. Like, you have to really love it to want to do this. So the people that are in it love it, and I think that shows. And so people that do this for a living are pretty happy and nice, and yeah, it's just a really nice, warm community.
Nice. I have a follow-up question on that I'm curious about, and I'm wondering if you can answer it. And I feel like it's a little bit of a taboo sort of question, because it's about like, how do I say this? To get into stop motion, like you need an insane amount of like skill, hours put in, like patience, etc. And you're like what you said, it's hard on your body. Like you have to really love it to do it. Is it worth it in terms of pay at the same time?
So there's a couple ways to think about it. Usually, and it depends, the different studios do pay differently. Like, there are
Yeah,
different rates at
because
different studios, and
normally
depending on the
animators
project. So
are unionized, but stop motion animators are not unionized, right?
stop motion is mostly not. So it can really vary from studio to studio, even just animator to animator. Like, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of rhyme or reason to who makes what. I think there's becoming more transparency, which is really good. I'm happy to see that happening. The thing that is the hardest, it's not so much the pay when you're on a project.
Yeah.
Usually you're making fine money. It's the times in between. So the way that the stop motion industry works, it's still pretty small. and sometimes there just isn't work, which isn't fun. So there are months, for almost everyone, like there's very few people in the stop motion world that escape this. There are some, that manage to have, full-time staff positions somewhere maybe, but for most people in stop motion, it's a contract-based work. So you're on a project for 6 months, 3 months, a year, whatever, and then you're not. And you have to be prepared for those times when you're not. So usually when you're on a project, in my personal experience, the pay has been pretty good and pretty fine. Like it was definitely like a living wage, and you can have an apartment in LA and be happy, but there's probably going to be a few months after that project where you're not making any money. So those are the times when it is tough and those are the times when I get the most discouraged about stop motion. It's never like when I'm actually animating. It's when I'm not animating that I'm like grumble about the industry.
Fair enough. So what are some of the things that you have to sacrifice as a stop motion animator that somebody who has a regular job might not have to sacrifice?
Location. Probably, if you want to be a professional stop motion animator, you're probably going to have to move to LA, Portland, London. I'm sure there's a few other places, but like I think those are the 3 big places in the world that do this. And like, but I think some of that might be changing. There are these smaller studios that are popping up. I mean, some of them are in LA and stuff, but there's other places now that are coming up that I think aren't as location based, and I would love to see that continue in like smaller places or like beautiful places, just for people that live on the other side of the country or don't want to move to LA or Portland. Just more options would be super cool. But for right now, if you want to work in stop motion, you kind of got to be in LA or Portland to work in TV or movies or any of that kind of stuff. And yeah, other than that, it's just the like be prepared to be out of work sometimes.
Gotcha. Okay. Location and out of work. So you've mentioned, well, and I think it's pretty common knowledge that the stop motion community is pretty small. So does that make breaking into it really tough if you're an up and coming or like aspiring animator then?
I think it makes it easier personally. Because once you meet one person, you probably know at least 20, 40, 50 other people. Like
So does that mean you go back and talk to all your peers in stop motion and say like, oh, hey, I just met Terry and he's
totally, yeah, like
animator and he's going to be working on our next show.
Exactly. No, word totally gets around. If there's somebody talented that is doing cool things, like you will know about these people and they will like, I think the thing that took me a long time to realize was that like studios are looking for talented people. Like I feel like when I was growing up, I kind of thought of these studios as these like mythical places, like just like these. I watched endlessly when I was not little, but like as like in middle school, the like behind the scenes for the Wallace and Gromit movie. Like on the DVD special features, like
You mean Curse of the Were-Rabbit?
I can't tell you how many times I watched that. And like it seemed like such a like crazy world. Like I couldn't imagine like working in a place like that. And I've never worked at Aardman, but I've worked at major studios and with major players in the animation world, and like everyone's just normal people. Like everyone's pretty down to earth, and like people like Instagram is a great like there's all these like 16-year-olds on Instagram now that are animating better than I can, and like everyone knows about that. Like, it's just like the word gets around about good people, and I think that it's not hard to make a name for yourself in stop motion if you are willing to do that. Like, you have to put yourself out there a little bit and write some emails and go to meet people. And but it's a healthy combination of, like, you have to have the good work, but you also have to know the right people. It's important to just like be friendly, because you never know who you're going to meet and who is going to be working with you as a total peer on this movie, and like they're your same rank or whatever, and then maybe they're the animation director on some show that you're trying to get hired on, and like that is just kind of how it works. Like, you're gonna be working with people that probably will end up hiring you later down the line. So
I've heard that a lot. In fact, one of the first things they said when everybody's in the same room at Sheridan College, when all the first years come in, they say, like, look to your left and right. One of these people is going to hire you, and the other person's going to work for you, basically.
Yeah, no, it's really true.
Yeah. So I feel like you already answered this, but what is like the number one thing somebody who is working in stop motion, either as an aspiring animator or they're already working on a production, can do that's going to have the biggest payoff for them in their career from your experience?
Ooh, I would say if you want to be an animator, like if you want to like be pushing puppets around all day, do that. Like, if you have the time to do it, take a few weeks, a few months if you can, and just animate. Like, it's the only way to learn how to do it. Like, you can read as much as you can watch as much as you can, but you're never gonna actually understand it until you get a puppet under lights, under a camera, and are moving it around for 10 hours a day for weeks on end. Like that, I think that is just the most important thing you can do to really learn about yourself as an animator. Like, learn what you're good at, like learn what you need to improve on, but also just to understand how motion works and how to get like emotion out of a face or a pose, a body language, and like you can't really do that in little stints. It's kind of I think the hardest thing about animation school for people that want to become like actual animators is that there's never really time to actually just animate.
Yeah.
Like I was saying,
fair.
I was trying to do that and I wasn't sleeping. Like, so
Yeah.
like, and so if somebody wants to become an animator and has the time and space to do it, that would be my biggest recommendation, is just get yourself an armature, like buy like a decent ball and socket armature, or if you know how to build a good wire armature or something, just get a puppet that like won't break on 3 frames in, and just animate. Yeah, let's just move it around.
That's such a strange point that you brought up, because like I had just finished second year of animation school. I'm going into third. But when I think about it, the amount of hours I spend in school that are not animation I don't know, it's probably like 70% non-animation classes and then 30% animation, because you're doing life drawing like hours every day, and you're doing character design, and you're doing perspective and layout drawings, and you're doing painting, and it's kind of crazy when you think about it. Like, and the animation that you do is very small stints. It's like animate 5 seconds of dialogue, or animate one action with a heavy object, like lifting it or something like that. Because animation school, they're trying to get you to first generalize in everything so you have a good foundation. And then it gets different because in fourth year I have to produce a thesis film and it's all animation. So it's very strange though, because if you have the confidence to know exactly what you want to do, like say for you quit school after 2 years because you're like, I just want to stop motion animate. I probably don't need to learn all the other stuff and pay at CalArts an exorbitant amount of money to go there. So yeah, if you have the confidence to know that you just want to be a stop motion animator, just do that. Do you think
and that's the caveat to that, to like, you have to, if you only do that if you know, or maybe if you want to know, how do I say that? If you want to find out if that's what you want to do, I think there's probably no better way to find out you don't want to be an animator than to animate for 10 hours a day for a week. Like, if you don't like doing that, then you're probably not going to want to be an animator. But there's a lot to be said. I think there's a lot to be said for learning life drawing and all those other skills. Like you definitely shouldn't like just animate. Like, I mean, I am personally a terrible, horrendous draftsman. Like I can barely hold a pencil. I am not good at drawing. So I was always really bad at life drawing classes, but I took a lot of life sculpture classes when I was at CalArts, and those were really beneficial just to like understand forms and anatomy and shapes and poses and stuff like that is really important. So yeah, I don't want to sound like I'm like saying like neglect everything else and just animate, because you have to do other things and you have to like watch other things, like watch movies and live action and stuff too. But
I think it's totally possible if you have the confidence and you have the history in your own personal journey to know that you're totally fine doing just one specialized thing, to go for it, right?
Yeah, totally.
Like you had a Laika internship where you were animating 10-hour days, just so you already had the experience to know that you wanted to do this. So
yeah. And then the other thing, kind of going off what you just said about animation school, where you animate a ball bounce and then the next week you animate a dialogue test. I think that is great, but it would be like the way to really get good at things like that is to animate a ball bounce and then animate another ball bounce and then animate another ball bounce and then again and again and again, and just like animate those ball bounces until you're sick of them.
Because like we animate a ball bounce and then you submit it, you get feedback and a grade, and then you never animate a ball bounce again. But
exactly.
But it's also the principles of that ball bounce are also incorporated into, I don't know, a character jumping up and down or something like that, or like a flower stack animation. So it builds off each other. But I kind of agree. Like, I'm happy to not redo assignments over and over again, because that's its own stress.
No, it can get tedious for sure.
But I agree that it's super beneficial to do those things. So maybe just as we wrap it up now, you've talked about all the experiences you worked on. What's next for you, or what are you working on that you can share?
So I am working. Yeah, I'm working right now on the new Henry Selick movie, Wendell and Wild.
Wendell and Wild.
So
I'm dying to see
excited.
Any pictures of that, because there's
it looks good. I can't tell you anything about it yet, but it looks really good.
I probably look it up every single week to see if there's any new pictures, because like I have no reference point in my mind of what it's going to look like.
Yeah, it's great. I love the style of this movie. I can't talk about it at all, and I wish I could, but it's beautiful. It's super unique. I can't wait for people to see it. But yeah, I'm animating on that, and not actively at the moment. I'm able to do some tests from home, some animation tests for it, and hopefully we'll get back in the studio soon. But I started about a month before the world shut down, so I was in the studio for 3 or 4 weeks. For real.
I hope that all goes super well for you, and hopefully this pandemic lightens up so we can all
I hope so
go back to work. But I don't know. It doesn't seem like that given this current.
I know. So yeah, working on that, which is being taking, most of my time, as it should. And then actually it's been really fun. I've been learning CG.
No way. What?
Yeah.
How come?
I have never done it before. I've kind of always pushed it aside as like a stop motion purist, and kind of scoffed at the idea. Until like a few years ago, I was like, it would be really nice to be able to have like a backup if I wanted it. For those times when there isn't stop motion work, which probably will happen again. Or just, it's fun in general. I like animation in general. So it's nice to be able to like work in a different medium. So it's been interesting to like relearn the basics, because like you said, you don't ever animate a ball bounce again. And like, here I am last week animating a ball, but just a straight standard ball bounce. And it's like, oh, that's how you do that.
I act surprised, but I've actually seen your animations because I follow you on Instagram. But CG is actually like a common secondary thing for stop motion animators that I've come across.
Yeah,
so that's interesting.
I think there's quite a few that do it really well, and I mean, there's a whole generation of stop motion people that basically had to, once Jurassic Park came out, there was no very little stop motion work. So there's a whole kind of a generation or two above me that like basically were forced into doing CG work.
Is there anything else you wanted to add as just we wrap up the chat?
Yeah, I don't think so. I'm hoping that people, I don't know when Wendell and Wild will come out, a couple years probably. So hopefully people will go see that. They can see my stuff on Tumble. My shots are scattered all throughout. It's I can't point to like I did this entire episode and that just Tumble season 3 and 4. All my stuff's in there. I didn't talk about storybots at all. Go listen to people that are listening to this podcast can listen to the Colin Lepper episode and get all the information about that. He's amazing and has been on here and can tell you all about
at some point. I'm just going to have every stop motion animator on this podcast.
Yeah, do it.
Half the people you today I've already had on this podcast.
I know. So I worked on that show as well, and that one I did do more like actual episodes and sequences. So if people watch the nutrition episode or the recycling episode or the toilets episode, I did a lot of that stuff, a lot of stuff in all of those. So and my wife and I are working on some projects together. She has a pitch for a mini series that she's been working on that we did a proof of concept for in stop motion that hopefully will be finished soon. And lots of fun projects.
That's awesome. It sounds like you're busy. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to come on the podcast. It was really insightful for me to hear. Yeah, it was really insightful for me to hear exactly your mentality of approaching stop motion. It got my wheels turning because like I'm working on my own.
Well, it's a weird little mindset you have to get into. It's not a normal thing that most people have to think about. So I'm glad to shed whatever, and anything I say is just my way of thinking about it. Like you could probably talk to 20 stop motion animators and every one of them is going to have a different mindset outlook about like how to animate. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. Like don't like say that this is the way to animate.
Everything you just said.
Everything I've said for the last hour and however long we've been talking, you can just ignore.
Okay, great. Good to know. Well, thank you so much for coming on the chat.
All right. Thanks, Terry.
All right. And if you're listening and you want to follow Ian's work or get in touch with him, you can reach out to him at ianbooneanimation@gmail.com or check out his Vimeo reel, which I'll include, and also include his Instagram and YouTube. But just a note about his Instagram, you have to like banjo music because he posts a lot of him playing the banjo on there amongst his animation. And that's all for now. Thank you so much for listening. All right, bye.